Hello everybody, good morning. Thank you for joining us. If you've just joined us for the first session of the day, welcome. If you've come back after being at our fireside chat this morning, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to webinar session number 1, Changes in Consumer Behaviour. How are omni-channel retailers responding to this world that we're now living in? Your holding slide is about to disappear, and here we are. Live. Good morning. We are real people behind that holding slide. Good morning, I'm Darren Williams. Welcome, as I just said, and I'll be leading today's session with an esteemed group of people alongside me, and they'll be doing most of the talking, I'm pleased to say. So I'm Darren. I'm a couple of hats on, Executive Chair of Scrubbed, a men's skincare brand, and the founder of Williams Harding Consulting, working with various clients from the world of chocolate, hospitality, wine, dentistry, and so on. A real old mixed bag, and it's my pleasure to do so. And one of my jobs is also presenting webinars like this for the Retail Bulletin. So we're going to crack on with today's panel. It's a 45-minute session. Just to pre-warn you, I do have a dog called Scamp. She is currently sleeping peacefully at my feet, and that may continue for the whole 45 minutes. Or she may make an uninvited entrance like she did in the fireside chat this morning, as you may have seen if you were watching that. But just be warned, we may have an interruption from a four-legged friend at some point. I'm going to get my panel to introduce themselves, and then once we've done that, we will crack on with today's questions. Please look at the top of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. Please do use that. We want you to be as involved, as hopefully engaged as possible. So use the Q&A. You might have a question for a particular speaker. You might have a question that you want everybody to give their opinion on, but please do use that button. We had great engagement with that in the last session, and you're very welcome to steer the webinar forward with the questions that you'd like to ask as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go on the order of my program here. So Joe, good morning, and tell us about who you are.
Good morning, Darren, and good morning, everybody. It's an absolute privilege to be with you today. And Darren's already told us that the first session was fabulous, so we'll try very hard not to disappoint. I have the privilege of being the CEO of the Institute of Customer Service. And essentially, what does that mean? We work with organizations across a multitude of different sectors to help them to get better at delivering brilliant customer experiences, whether that's online or in person. And not because this is just a nice thing to do, but because there's a really hard economic value in it.
Thank you, Joe, for that. And looking forward to chatting to you this morning. We just had a comment come in from Mike, actually, who just said to me, if you're on a desktop, the Q&A button is at the bottom of the screen. If you're on another device, it's at the top of the screen. So thank you, Mike. That's a really good point. I didn't realize they were in different places, actually. So thank you for that tip. That's very useful because we want to use that Q&A. Cheers, Joe. Connie. Tell us about you.
Hi, Darren. Hi, everyone. I'm Connie Nam. I'm founder and CEO of Astrid and Miyu. Astrid and Miyu is a contemporary omni-channel direct-to-consumer, which sounds really because I couldn't find jewelry that resonates with my sentiments, that were well-branded, well-designed, and well-made, and also at affordable price points. So we've been growing really quickly, and we were ranked number 9 in the Sunday Times Fast Track 100 list last year, which I'm really proud of. And I dare say that we're revolutionizing the jewelry industry through experiential retail, as well as strong community, and also innovative designs in jewelry. And I mean, previously to founding Astrid, I worked as an investment banker in Hong Kong, mainly doing tech IPOs, and I also consulted for LD. Like Darren, I might have some interruptions as well. I have 2 toddlers that are 3.5 and 2.5. So if they come uninvited, please excuse me.
There'll be very welcome interruptions, so don't worry about that. I think one of the things about this Zoom life that we're now living is that real life's happening behind us all the time. So children, pets, anybody, all very welcome indeed. Bring them on. Connie, just be aware your connection's a little bit delayed, so just have a look at that whilst we're going through the other panelists.
Yeah, will do.
Thank you. Simon, tell us about you.
So good morning, everyone. My name's Simon Irwin. I'm head of the retail team at Credit Suisse in London. I've been covering this particular role for about 20 years. I've been doing it at Credit Suisse for 8, and lived in Hong Kong for a while before that. What we do is look at all the largest online retailers, omnichannel retailers, such as Inditex and H&M, and also the big sporting goods brands like Adidas, Puma, and the distributors such as JD. And our primary role is to advise clients in what they should invest, which really means trying to work out what the future looks like, rather than where we've been over the last few years. So we spend quite a lot of time looking at industry structures and channels, and obviously it's a pretty interesting time at the moment with deals a go and a lot of restructuring happening simultaneously.
Indeed, interesting times indeed. Thank you for that, Simon. Look forward to talking to you. Hilary, tell us about you.
Morning, everybody. My name's Hill. I again apologise. I've got 2 children downstairs, slightly older than Connie's, but they may make an entrance as at some point, as may my cats as well. So you might see some other four-legged friends. So I was most recently sort of commercial director, brand director at Forever Unique, which is an SME based in Manchester. Those of you who are familiar with the Real Housewives franchise may watch Real Housewives of Cheshire. So one of those ladies, Seema, is the owner of that business, Forever Unique. And it was an occasion wear business, now very much transitioning into a premium day wear business due to the pandemic. And I tend to do, so my role is to come in and reorganize or build a new team. So I've done lots of different senior level marketing appointments in the retail e-commerce sector, mostly focusing on fashion, that kind of thing. And I tend to come in and build teams or try and solve a problem. So I was building out a new team for Forever Unique and also replatforming them. So that's me.
Thank you. And any interruptions, as I said before, very welcome. Bring it on. Richard, tell us about you.
Yeah, good morning, Darren, and good morning, everybody else. So yeah, I'm Richard Willis. I'm the Regional Vice President for Solution Consulting here at Aptos. For those of you who don't know Aptos is a global retail technology company. And my role, my very privileged role, is to work with retailers across Europe and Asia Pac, helping them adapt and change to the ever-changing world, particularly in this omni world. Not just how do they deliver better customer experience in the physical environment, but actually how they adapt their businesses at the back end to the changes caused by pandemic, the growth in digital, but equally how do you forecast where product should be? So how do we get the right balance between holding back for the digital world and indeed still satisfying and providing a great experience in store? So I've been working with retailers for too many years to count, but it's great. I'm delighted to be here this morning.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all 5 of you for taking time out of your diaries to speak with us today. We are live until 12:15 today, so we've got plenty of time. So let's crack on and get talking to our panel. Joe, I'm going to come to you. What are you most excited about in these strange times that we're living in, and what conversely is worrying you the most?
Okay, so really good question to kick off. And just a couple of things, I think, to put some context around it. I was looking at some data, and the 11th of Jan was a whole year since we had the first case of COVID in the UK. And then you think about it, the 23rd of March will be a whole year living in lockdown. And for many parts of the UK, they've been in various stages of lockdown. So it's not like, although we're saying it's the 3rd national lockdown now, for large swathes of the UK, they've been pretty much in lockdown during that period. So one of the things that kind of, I suppose, delights me or excites me is just how amazing organizations, individuals have been in terms of dealing with all of this. And, you know, if I had £1 for every time, you know, a board member says to me, we've achieved more in 2 weeks than would normally take us 2 years, you know, I'd be a very rich woman. So the whole area of innovation, speed, pace, energy, and really thinking differently has really impressed me, if I was honest, and gives me great hope, because incredible stories of really strong, both individual in terms of human being, but also organizational capability and development. What worries me, I guess, is, you know, we do, as people will know, the UK Customer Satisfaction Index. And actually, customer satisfaction pre-COVID and since COVID has been on a downward slide. And, you know, that's over 45,000 responses, 13 different industry sectors. Now, the retail sector generally has held up pretty well. And as a sector, it is one of the few sectors that has bucked the trend in the last 12 months in terms of customer satisfaction, holding or slightly increasing. But that trend is not good. And the reason why I worry about that is what I started with in terms of my opening, is all our evidence suggests that there's a strong link between customer satisfaction and reputation, customer satisfaction and trust, customer satisfaction and long-term financial well-being. So my fear is that some organizations may equate customer experience or customer service as a cost. And I really hope as we go into this next period, which is going to be really challenging, that organizations don't do that. And we hold on to the brilliance that we have been able to demonstrate during this time. So those are my two things: brilliance in terms of innovation, fear about the fact that, you know, we might consider service to be a cost.
It's fascinating what we've been through. And when you make the point about, you know, some people have been living under lockdown for almost a year, we forget that, I think. Certainly if we've been more based around London and the capital, because we had that almost tantalizing touch of real life last summer where we were able to go to a bar and restaurant again, yes, with all of the changes and restrictions, but we were able to do that again. And it felt it might just be coming back, and then it was kind of taken away again. But for some people, they've just lived like this for almost a year. It's quite something. Thank you, Joe, for that kickoff. We'll come back to you soon. Connie, tell me, how's your connection now? You good?
I don't know. It feels okay from my side. Is that okay?
That's sounding spot on.
Yeah, I actually left and came back. I always find that that's the easiest way.
And that seems to have fixed it. It's like the old switch on and off thing, isn't it? It just seems to
exactly.
Perfect. COVID-19 obviously has completely pulled the rug from under every business, and everyone's had to think differently about the way they've done business. How's your organization adapted and learned since the pandemic started?
So many things. Obviously, it was a really tragic event, what's happened, and it affected so many lives. But I feel like personally at Astrid and Miyu, we've come out of it so much stronger. So I'll tell you a few things, like a few ways that we've adapted. First is complete shift to online, and also merging the online and physical experiences. So I mean, we were a digital first brand anyway, so it was quite easy for us to migrate retail customers into online. And one of the ways we did that was to bring in digital styling. So our store managers were speaking to our customers on Zoom. So our customers could book in 30-minute slots, and they would come in just to chat to our store managers because they're lonely, or they wanted to just, because they had that existing relationship. So they were just chatting, and then they happened to buy things. So that was one thing that shifted, and we're going to continue on with that services even when things reopen. And then second is, I think it just became a time of real sharing and caring. And building a community. I know that this has been a huge trend among brands, but I feel like, as Joe said, it's kind of expedited a lot of things that were happening already. So, you know, building that strong community internally and externally. So when the pandemic hit, we didn't try to sell jewelry. We tried to make our customers feel better, our community feel better, and our staff feel better. So we were creating all these contents about self-care and all these things. And I personally started mentoring small businesses, and then off of that, my team started mentoring fresh graduates that were struggling, to be honest. And also all my senior leadership team joined in with me to start mentoring small businesses. And I think that sense of community really became strong during the pandemic, which I think will carry on going forward. And then in terms of how people are managed and how we communicated, as the pandemic hit, I started communicating to the entire group of staff every single day. I mean, now, like, when we get back to normal, that's too much, but I think we realized the importance of communication, and because we had to do everything virtually, we're so thoughtful and a lot more structured in terms of our communication. So every single meeting counts. We're not there to just like socialize, but we're being really thoughtful about it. And I think we actually had more social events during the lockdown. Obviously, initially we had a lot of bingos and a lot of pub quizzes, which became a bit tiring, but we, our people and culture team came up with a lot of creative ideas to bring people in. And I think it became a lot more inclusive. Whereas if you're in the physical world, people who click together, there's it's natural to have smaller cliques where they go to the pub together, but it just became a much more inclusive environment, which I thought was. And then last is obviously prudent cash spending. When the pandemic hit, we had to, just slash all our variable costs. Marketing cost was one of them, but we were really looking at every single line item to see where can we reduce costs and where can we negotiate really hard. And I think that's really good discipline. As a growing business, we naturally didn't think about cost saving. We were always thinking about the top line, but this just gave a really good discipline to the team. Yeah, so I think those were the things that we've learned and adopted during COVID.
That feel better messaging that you referred to, I think, has been really key, because I think consumers are looking for that, right? They just want to seek brands and places where they can feel good about themselves, whether that's something they buy, they wear, they use on their skin, anything like that. I think it's been a real
exactly.
Yeah. I remember being, funny how you mentioned all the pub quizzes and stuff. I remember being quite excited by a Zoom pub quiz like last March. It was like getting ready for a night out and have a few beers and see your friends. And now someone suggests a quiz to me. I'm like, I just can't do any more online quizzes.
Yeah. I couldn't do any more. After the first 2 months, I couldn't do them anymore.
Yeah, no, we had like a rhythm going. Me and some friends were like doing the same night every week, and everyone was like looking forward to it. But now it's kind of dried up a little bit. Its tendency has waned somewhat. Thank you for that, Simon. Tell me, sir. So, big headlines recently: Boohoo, ASOS, M&S. Recently just snapped up Jaeger, for example. So all of these old brands are being swept up by some of the digital players, but good to see M&S, a physical brand, picking up Jaeger as well. But there's this kind of big suction of the digital players taking what are the old high street names. Is that the way it's going to be now? Or should retailers become just marketplaces? Or should they increase their choice and range and price points? Or just hold their nerve and stick to what they were good at in the first place? What's your view?
So, as you say, we've probably had a decade of restructuring in the past 6 months, and I suspect there's more to come. As you said, with Boohoo, ASOS, JD Sport, who just made 2 big acquisitions in the US, got a big war chest going as well, and I think there's more. There's definitely a trend going on for a lot of these retailers of becoming more of a platform. In some cases more of a marketplace as well, but trying to offer more product essentially to their existing customers as they come to the brand. And I think I kind of broadly agree with that to some extent. I mean, certainly if you're M&S and you're one of the largest e-com retailers, you've got a very sticky and quite a unique kind of population, and it does make sense. But equally, I think that brands are going to have to increasingly separate what their brand stands for, whether the customer kind of engages with them and wants their product, and the physical fulfillment of that. And it may well be that that you'll kind of decide you really like a pair of sneakers that you saw, say, on Instagram. You may have even gone to the company's website, thought, yeah, great. And then you're still going to go to ASOS or Zalando and actually order them because you can bulk up the order. The fulfillment is fantastic. And the reality is that most people are not going to have an app and an engagement directly with every single brand. There isn't enough room on your phone. It's too much hassle and friction. And frankly, the big companies are just better at it. So I think the brands increasingly need to focus on what it is that they're best at, the product, the brand itself. And in some cases, say, yeah, we're not so good at the fulfillment side. And certainly Next, with their kind of newly launched Total platform, is essentially saying, we recognize that, come to us and we'll do it all for you. This probably isn't what Richard wants to hear. He can tell me why I'm wrong, but I think increasingly in Europe, we've been kind of very much seduced by this whole idea that retailers and brand owners were also distributors. Now that's not the case so much in other parts of the world, where in the US you've got many more multi-brand distributors. And I think the big change that we're going to see over the next couple of years is much more of a separation between the various functions.
Thank you. In the Boohoo case, I sort of watch commentary on LinkedIn daily, as I'm sure many of us do. And in the Boohoo example, when they bought the Debenhams brand, there was quite a lot of anger directed at Boohoo for their decision to buy the brand but close the stores. What's your view on that decision they made? Do you think they made the right call? Do you understand why they did it?
Well, I can kind of see why people are angry, but they're blaming the wrong people. I mean, if you want to blame anyone for Debenhams going wrong, blame the VCs who refloated it with totally unsustainable lease liabilities. It was going to go bust, and it did go bust. It's not Boohoo's fault. Boohoo stepped in. No one was going to take on those lease liabilities in much the same way as been the case with with ASOS buying out the most of the Arcadia brands and Topshop. So that was kind of going to happen. You can certainly buy a bit of goodwill, but if you want to, say, offer to redeem gift cards or something like that, but it's, as I said, this is, these were eminently forecastable events. It was only a question of time before it happened. The interesting thing will be is just how much goodwill is within these brands. I mean, it's interesting, within Debenhams, for example, you've got Principles and Faith, two brands that had already gone bust, been bought by Debenhams. Now that's gone bust, and they've been kind of brought in by Boohoo. And for Boohoo, the real icing on the cake for them is to try and get hold of that beauty business. Online beauty is under enormous transition at the moment. Everyone wants to get their piece, and it'll be interesting to see if the big brands, the Estee Lauders of this world, actually kind of are happy for Boohoo to distribute their product, or whether they kind of would rather do it themselves.
I kind of share your view, actually, Simon. I think, it's easy to direct anger to them for closing, much loved stores, but, the writing was on the wall some time ago, and it was either a choice of no Debenhams brand whatsoever, or Boohoo trying to resurrect it in some way. Thank you for that. Hilary, I'm going to come to you. How's the cake making going in the background? All good?
Everything smells.
Soup making. Sorry,
it's soup making. Everything smells okay. So at least I know what I'm getting for lunch. That's good. Tick. So some nice crusty bread and some freshly made soup for my lunch, which is excellent, but a huge kitchen cleanup job awaits me. So that
sounds perfect. I need to train my dog to be out in the kitchen making me lunch while I'm on webinars. That'd be a challenge for me, another lockdown challenge. Hilary, everyone loves the phrase new normal. It got used a lot, banded around a lot in the last 12 months. And I guess from this new normal, we'll go to another new normal post-pandemic as well. Will we see a big shift to what some people are calling the kindness economy, where kind of social and economic are more balanced, or will it just be like it was before? What's your view?
So I think it's a really interesting time, because during, as soon as the pandemic started in sort of end of March last year, we started to see lots and lots of brands doing things, and Joe, you referred to this as well, in a much more kind way. Lots of different brands, big brands doing really good things. Uber giving free rides to NHS staff, Pret a Manger giving discounted lunches to NHS staff, brands stepping up, basically. Nike reinforcing the message, you know, rather than, you know, Nike being out there, but Nike reinforcing the message to stay home and to work out at home. So I think there have been a lot of brands, big brands and small brands, who have stepped up and really thought about their core purpose and thought about how they could use their businesses for good. You know, Burberry transitioning their factories into a place where they were producing masks and PPE equipment rather than producing apparel. Fantastic. I think they really led the charge there in the luxury brands. So I think that's been super interesting, and I've seen lots of brands really stepping up and trying to have some purpose. And I suppose my take on all this is that consumers, I think, realise and have realised during this pandemic that brands who do something a little bit differently, brands who step up and care about them, not just about their pounds, but about their lives and about how they experience the world, those brands will make a difference. And I think I was reading some interesting statistics a couple of days ago from one of the big, I think Forrester research group produced a big piece of work basically saying that coming out of this pandemic, the brands who really demonstrate purpose and value and the ability to engage customers at a different level will be the brands who succeed. And I think that, you know, if we think about that example of Boohoo having acquired the Debenhams business, obviously not the stores, they've acquired that acquisition for me is all about beauty and data. It'll be really interesting to see whether they actually choose to even use those brands to engage with the customer. Will they use any of the Debenhams brands, you know, Red Herring, Faith, any of them? I really doubt it. How are they going to use that acquisition to acquire new and fresh customers and build some purpose out of that acquisition? Because otherwise it's just a name they've acquired. They've acquired a brand name, Faith, Red Herring, Debenhams, and they've probably got a load of data, a fistful of data there. How do they engage those consumers to get them trading to get them trading digitally, to get them trading with a very different business? I think will be really fascinating. And I don't see us returning to a situation where brands with zero purpose are able to engage their customers well. You know, at Forever Unique, when we were really in the throes of it, we created a social group which had nothing to do with buying product and everything to do with supporting our customers, because most of our customers were middle-aged women, and they were finding the pandemic really hard with homeschooling and a lot of you know, finding their feet in a different world, and we had to create a new group for them, and that was really good. That was really good. And we found that customers engaged with the brand on a completely different level, because we were able to say, we feel your pain, we feel your problem, we're in it with you. And then we created that sort of group on Facebook.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think this whole messaging, kindness economy, purpose is going to be so important if it's authentic. You know, because I think there's a real fine line between purpose and virtue signaling as well. And I think some brands have done a really bad job of trying to look like they care, and actually it comes across quite disingenuous. I remember at the start of the pandemic, I was getting tons of emails from businesses that I hadn't heard of in ages telling me how much they cared about me and how they wanted to keep me safe. And it just felt a bit like, you don't really care and you don't really want to keep me safe. You just felt the need to get in touch on the back of the pandemic. And it just felt a bit disconnected. But I do think it's going to be really key, that whole purpose, kindness balance, if it's done well and from a genuine place as well. Thank you. Great to hear your views. Richard, you've been on mute long enough. It's time we heard your voice.
Thank you, Darren.
That's all right. When I talk to retailers, one of the challenges they faced is their stores, which were effectively another warehouse, a channel of warehouses. With those now closed, there's much more pressure on their own distribution centres and warehouses, which are holding mountains of stock they weren't designed to hold, because it used to be out in stores as well. How, in particular, do you see retailers facing those challenges where they've got tons of inventory in kind of one place, and warehouse is not big enough to hold stock for what used to be just servicing online.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and I will come back to Simon's point earlier on, because, you know, I still see the stores as being a real part of retail going forwards. And, you know, my heart says one thing, which is, you know, we need more physical stores. You know, they are an essential part of retail. They're part of the experience. But, you know, with this big shift, and, you know, when we were chatting the other day, you know, somebody said that this pandemic has accelerated the digital evolution by about 5 years. And, you know, Boohoo, and it's quite odd because department stores were struggling in the physical environment, yet you get the likes of ASOS, Boohoo, Zalando, these marketplaces that are effectively digital department stores exploding. But, you know, for me, this balance of digital and physical is a way that a retailer or these brands will thrive, and they've got to use their stores basically as those mini distribution centers. You know, they're more localized. You can get and it comes down to the experience as well. So, you know, your point, the distribution centers, the warehouses just don't have capacity. You know, we have one of our customers who at the moment is just continually buying warehouse space, you know, because they've stopped moving stuff to stores. But actually the folks that have got this right are now using those stores as dark stores. They're using them as distribution points. So when they do open again, and of course this comes back to opening again, they're able to start distributing from those stores, offering click and collect. You know, the big wave that we saw through the pandemic, a lot of adoption of what we call fulfill from store. So they're using that stock that's sitting in their store and satisfying customer need there, rather than transporting product from the warehouse to the store. You know, so not only is that from an economic point of view and from a green perspective, we're not shipping lorries load of product all over the place when they don't need to. It's there local to the customer. And, you know, we'll see a lot more of that. There are a lot more retailers that have got to think about doing that. And it's a balancing act, of course, you know, so I think we'll see a redistribution of stores, and by that, just getting stores in the right shape, the right size, to be able to fulfill a lot more. There'll probably be more store closures, unfortunately, but that's probably a necessity because some of them are too small. It's not a great customer experience. And I think that's the part that each retailer has to think about is, how do they how do they get the experience back into their stores to drive retail, to drive us as consumers back in there, because we've got so comfortable sitting in our armchairs shopping at home. And you know, it is about creating that experience. That's what drives everybody back, and we know that from our Golden Quarter survey that we did at the end of 2020. It showed there's pent-up demand, you know, and I think when we come out of this lockdown, there will be a wave of traffic back to the stores. We saw it in that little time, those 4 weeks we were allowed that little bit of freedom back in November. There was a wave back into the stores. But I think, you know, when we come out of this one, everybody's got to try and find the right balance to encourage, make it comfortable for people, get their confidence back. And I think it's going to take all of the rest of this year to create and get that confidence back. So really successful brands have got to think about their experience, get the customers back, but balance between holding everything for the digital channel and making sure there's a good range in their stores, and they're not holding it back. And it leads to a lot of other topics. You know, we could go on forever, but you know,
it's interesting how you mention dark stores, because there's a massive rise in these kind of quick grocery solution apps and so on. And I'm getting bombarded with their adverts on social media, and they're going to use old retail spaces as their kind of mini DCs, if you like. So that's going to be one repurposing. And I actually experienced the pain of trying to find a warehouse with Scrubs, the skincare brand I'm chair of, because we went big in the US last year. We launched a 60-store Nordstrom deal, and my word, trying to find warehouse space in the US was tough last year. So, and that's because everybody was filling the warehouses because their stores were all closed. So interesting times. We've actually had a question in from a store manager called Holly. Thank you. And I'm going to put this to all of you, please. And I'll start with you, Joe, as well. But I'd like to get an opinion from each of you on this one, because it's a really good question that Holly's asking. So Holly is a store manager, and she's saying, what can physical store managers do to protect their business now that all the focus seems to be on online? Because as store managers, we have limited control and input working for the brand or company that we're with. So what would be your thoughts? What would be your advice to Holly, Joe?
So I think a couple of things. I mean, it's already been touched on a little bit. Connie touched on it and Richard touched on, what does the new experience look like? Because for me, you know, although we're obviously moving more to being online and buying online, if that is a soulless experience, then that would also fail. You know, when we first moved to, you know, it was going to be, everything is going to be online. Well, unless it means something, online or offline, it's not going to work anyway. So this whole thing for me about being transactional is what's changed. We've got less monies in our pockets. We care more about what we're doing. There's a whole kind of thing around, we've touched on this as well. Does this organization really care about me? That are they greenwashing or are they being genuine? All of these important kind of things about authenticity. So what can I do in the store? It is a mixture of things. There's one around what's the role of the high street more broadly going forward. You know, it's a destination. The fact that there's much more around collaboration. I'm going to go to this place because I want a wider experience. It's not just about buying from that store. So there's some things for Holly that you probably can't necessarily impact locally, but there are other things that you can do, i.e. working with other people around you, making that more of a place that I'm going to go. I'm going to go for them to eat. I'm going to go for the experience of shopping. I'm going to watch a cooking demonstration. I'm going to be on a catwalk. I'm going to be doing all of these different kind of things, potentially creative things. And actually, while I'm doing that, there's a place that my kids can go. So this whole kind of sense of it being a destination, not just I'm going in to buy something. And the more that we can create that, I think the better that is. And smart brands are also replicating that a little bit online too. So for me, it's being really clear about who you're serving. So, you know, why are we relevant to this particular audience? And what are we trying to do in the bigger sense? It's not just about buying that product or that service. It's about making me feel good. It's making me feel connected. And the more that we can collaborate with those around us, the better.
Someone's actually just added to that point, saying that they, thank you, whoever TRB guest is, thank you. They just said that they believe COVID could reignite a passion for what was normal before.
Totally.
And so where stores were challenged before, people are missing them so much now, they can't wait to get back into them. So hopefully, Holly, that gives you a bit of
go with your mates, well. Don't you? You go with your friends. It's not just about you going single. One thing about buying online is you just do it yourself. Nothing great is there when you actually go with your mates and you can kind of say, oh, actually, what does this look like, or whatever.
Yeah, I completely agree with Joe, and I can give you some specific examples of how we did it at Astrid and Miyu. So we have this experiential retail component where people can come and get piercing, bracelet welding, or tattoo services, and we've seen a huge uplift. But also at the same time, you know, like exceptional customer services, that human interaction, like you mentioned, Joe, is so important. So what I tell our store staff or store managers is to have fun with the customers, because people want to come in for that experience, for that human interaction, which they're missing. So as a store manager, Holly, what you can, you know, do is to train your staff to bring out their personality, make customers want to come in, you know, see you personally, make friends, and also maybe suggest to management any experiences, services or experiences that you can bring into your store, if possible.
Yeah.
Connie, while I've got you, actually, someone actually was asking about your digital styling sessions, and have they been a success for you? Have they driven conversion and AOV, etc.?
Oh yeah, absolutely. AOV has been so much higher for digital styling. So Our normal AOV online is around £68, but with digital styling, it's more than £100. And one of the customers, I think, bought like £800 worth of stuff. And that's a lot of items because our average price points are £40. So I think that like real
we like
human
those customers.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that, you can't ignore that human interaction.
Thank you so much. Simon, Holly, our store manager, give her some hope, sir.
All right, so I'm mute. So I think it's all a question of making the store experience as relevant as possible. In terms of having product that you actually want to see and look at and kind of, as it were, kick the tires. The expectation that you're going to have a fabulous experience in store, and finally, I think it's also the social element as well. I mean, the example of which I always give is of JD Sport, where they're essentially selling shoes in boxes. Now, in theory, that's a really easy transaction to do online. In practice, JD's online penetration is surprisingly low. It's pre-pandemic, it's well below 20%. Because people want to go to the stores, firstly for the social experience, they go there with their mates, and secondly, they want to actually see and kick the product, have a look at what this week's drops are. There's always something new there. There's always new product coming every week, and the sporting goods brands have been incredibly dynamic at kind of feeding that demand, with regular drops of new product literally every week or more often. And that's a really good example of how to make a store-based experience very relevant, and that it's particularly at a time when the big sporting goods brands are actually taking allocations away from retailers if they don't think that they're doing a decent job in store. What JD is doing is saying, look, we have a fantastic group of customers here which you can't reach with your generic app, and you're very reliant on us to deliver these customers to you. So they're just a very good example of how to use a store well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess for a store manager's point of view, and I'm going to come on to you now, Hilary, if I can, a store manager is only able to control a certain amount of what happens because they are at the mercy of what happens in the boardroom above them as well. And so it really depends on the direction of the retailer to enable Holly to make the most of her store. Hilary, give Holly some hope.
I think, so I live on the Wirral, which is up in the northwest near to Liverpool, and there are no really big towns on the Wirral. There are some small towns, and my local small town is called Bromborough, and there are a lot of shops on that high street that are in independence. And what I've noticed during this time is that those store managers have been working really, really hard to keep the high street of Bromborough alive, and actually have done an amazing job at driving greater levels of footfall to Bromborough High Street than they had seen pre-pandemic. And I think that's a lot to do with those store managers coming together as a kind of team of store managers in Bromborough, which is a very boring little high street. There's nothing particularly special about Bromborough, and saying, how are we going to protect our high street during the pandemic? So, our local butcher, obviously not a global, a very small local butchers, has been doing food cooking demos outside the store all Saturdays and all Tuesday afternoons. I think he just does cooking demos outside all the time, bringing people in. And I think that's a great way just to keep saying, we're here, you can smell us, you can see us, come in, buy something. But I think at the kind of the corporate level, where I think it is harder for store managers to manage their own destiny, I think it's about saying, right, when that customer comes into my store, what can I do to engage her differently in not just in a transactional level? And I was in our local Primark. I'm not a Primark shopper, but I like to shop around and see different experiences. And we have a Primark in Wallasey, and I know the store manager there quite well. And I think this is really interesting, nothing to do with Primark corporate. She has been asking her team there to make sure that they're always talking about product to customers. So they've been having store meetings within their actual store to say, okay, when you've got a customer who is looking at something, obviously don't go and, you know, throw yourself at them. But if they're looking at something, talk to them about the item, talk to them about how the item might be styled. And I think that's really interesting that even in Primark at a local level, their managers are doing that kind of thing.
No, I do as well. I think it's a great example, actually. Holly, I hope that's given you some tips and some hope as well for that the store is still going to be relevant. Thank you for that, Hilary. Richard, a question's actually coming for you directly. What do you see as the key success factors for a ship from store program?
Okay, key success factors for ship from store. I think that the first element of that is to ensure that you are balancing how many orders you're sending down to those stores. So if we're talking about when stores are reopened and they're trading, you've got to make sure that you're not suddenly just using those stores as pure distribution centers and losing that customer experience. So for it to be successful, you've got to work through how you're staffing, how you're looking after those customers that are coming through the doors, but equally at the same time, you know, getting it from a cost perspective really right and using your inventory to the best possible way. So don't overload the stores. Don't suddenly go, great, we're going to direct every order down to the local store to ship to that community, because you'll lose your actual walk through the door. So I think that's, you know, absolutely paramount. And then the other one is really look at the cost of whether you're actually going to physically ship. So if you're a luxury retailer or a high value brand, the cost of shipping is more affordable from the store. If you're a value retailer, then you've got to drive the customer more towards a collect in store service, unless you're charging the shipping fees. So I think it is don't you know, it comes back to all the points we've talked about. Don't lose the customer experience by just using the inventory out of the stores as just a default position.
Thank you, sir. And by the way, we've had a response in from Holly, our store manager, who just said, thank you so much, all of you. That was very helpful and encouraging. It's given me a lot to think about and a lot more hope in regards to my role going forward. So Holly, you are welcome. I'm glad it helped. We're out of time, but I'm going to do a final question for each of our panel. We've got a couple of questions I want to get to as well, which I'll direct to one of you, but I'm going to go around you and ask you for a 60-second close. Joe, I can't resist this question for you because you are the CEO of the Institute of Customer Services. So the obvious question for you to close with, why does customer service still matter? Okay, 3 key things. So if you're ever trying to convince the boardroom, brilliant long-term customer service will drive a 10% higher level over a 5 to 8 year period in your EBITDA, so your profitability. So 10 percentage points higher profitability over a 5 to 8 year period. Scoring a 9 out of 10 for customer satisfaction gives you a 50% higher level of trust rating and a 50% higher level reputational. And the cost of poor customer service, so you're getting it wrong, or us getting it wrong, to the nation last year cost the nation £122 billion. Wow. So I don't know about you, I'd much rather be spending my energies working on brilliant and new and innovative things than fixing things. So if you ever need to persuade the board, and we can share all of those stats as well, Darren, really happy to help in any way that we can. So there's a big economic driver is what I'm saying, as well as all the social and the important things that we've just talked about. Thank you, Joe. There's some pretty compelling stats there. Joe, we've worked together at in-person events before. I can't wait to do that with you again, but thank you for your input to today's panel. It's been lovely to see you, even on a screen. Hello and goodbye. Thank you. But thank you. Connie, I'm going to ask you one of our outstanding Q&As that have come in. So you've been doing some online events and so on that you said have driven good results for you. What technologies do you think retailers could introduce to encourage shoppers to return to the high street? On technologies, I think one of the things that we do a lot is segment
like highly personalized emails. And I think that's a really good way to engage with customers and a really cheap way to do that. So really understanding your customers, segmenting them properly and making it really personalized without being creepy, I think is like one technology you can use. And the obvious one that for us is social media, which is a huge driver of our traffic, as well as our sales, as well as our engagement. So using social media, I guess, in the right way, in a very targeted way, I would say.
Thank you. And I'm so happy that you're still managing to navigate through the pandemic so well. Brilliant brand you have there. And thank you so much for joining our panel today. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you, and my pleasure.
Simon, closing question, sir. So once the stores are back open, those retailers that have got a mix of online and retail and a big retail estate, how do they think about the location and cost of their stores moving forward? Do they completely rip up the rule book, or do they carry on as normal? What would your advice be?
I think they need to be super aggressive as they move forward in terms of kind of really making some hard decisions about kind of, firstly, where shoppers are going to want to be and where they need to be, because clearly the high street's going to be a pretty ugly place. There'll be vacancies in too many areas, and certainly, it's right to be cautious about footfall in some of the big city centres. The landlords obviously have been bossing it for the last 20 years or so. They are in a very weak position, and I think the retailers have really just got to go in there, make really harsh decisions, and say, look, my ideal store is in this type of location, and it's this type of this type of say format. And if it's not, then you've got to be aggressive about saying, well, fine, what are we going to do about it? Because far too many retailers have been sitting there. The average churn for a retail estate is less than 5%. So your average store sits there for 20 years. Now, it can't possibly be the right location and the right format for that store for all of those 20 years. So I think retailers now, they've kind of had the benefit of time to kind of sit there and make some decisions. There are deals to be done, and I think the retailers now need to kind of go out there and say, right, this is my fit for the future type of plan, and this is how I'm going to get there.
Indeed. Simon, thank you for your view on the world today. I really appreciate your time on the panel as well. Lovely to have you today. Thank you. Hilary, I'm going to take the last unanswered question that's coming on the Q&A, and it really, I'll summarize it. It comes from TRB guests. Thank you, whoever you are. But obviously, as people have been doing more experiential stuff online, we've become quite used to that over the last 12 months. Does that have a real impact in stores now? Because people are going to go into stores expecting that to be replicated.
I think that there are clearly some great experiential things going on online. Connie's talked about some fantastic service that her guys have offered to customers, talking them through their potential selections and asking about their lives. However, I do think that the physical store role will still be different. Yes, experience will be absolutely king. I think we've all said that stores are going to need, retail stores, the average retail store is going to need to up its game. There's no doubt about that. But I think technology can only do so much. And when you're shopping online, as Joe said, you're on your own. There is a lack of sense of social. There is a lack of sense of being with my friends and talking about what I might choose to purchase. And I think when we think about these physical stores and Gen Z and how that interaction will happen, I think it's going to be very different from online. I think we're going to expect stores to do some really different things. I think we're going to want them to host events, obviously real-time live events. We're going to want them to do lots of different types of theatre that will really engage, want them to make events of their stores. And I think stores increasingly will become event spaces and spaces for entertaining, not just spaces for transacting. And I think that will be quite different from an online experience. And I think the two things, yes, the expectations will be greater of bricks and mortar stores, but I think what customers will expect from bricks and mortar will be entertainment and real richness of community. That's what I'm really looking forward to, actually. I'm I'm a shopper. I like to buy in a physical store, and I'm so looking forward to getting back to that and seeing how stores respond.
Yeah, I can't wait for that either. Hilary, thank you so much for your input today, and I hope you enjoy your soup after this as well.
It's now literally, I've been hassled now twice via text message from downstairs that my lunch is ready.
Well, thank you for your time on the panel today.
Thank you.
Richard, you're going to wrap it up, sir. 60 seconds. Could you believe it? We've run over by 10 minutes. And by the way, the panelists, we've held our audience. So well done to all of you. Thank you so much. Richard, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up to say, you're obviously an advocate of stores. You believe in them, that you believe in the role they play in the future. Give them a signing off tip. Stores of the future.
Yeah, I think, in summary, and it's been said a lot, is look at your locations, get that absolutely right. Where you're going to have the highest impact. Get the basics. After all, it's retailing. You've got to get the fundamentals of retailing right, and it comes to customer service, customer experience. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Poundland or a luxury retailer or a mid-tier retailer. You've got to find the customer experience, and that has got to be paramount within this, and find that point of bringing customers in. And just coming back to Holly's point, the store managers have such a big role in this. They may feel direction from the board with regards to the brand and the operating processes, but as a store manager, and somebody said it, bring out the personality of your people. Make customers welcome. If you make them welcome to the stores, people will keep coming back. We've heard it several times already. We love to shop. We're social animals in our very nature. And therefore, if you create the right environment, people will keep coming. So, focus on how you can deliver great customer service. Doesn't matter what the brand or what the offering is.
Thank you, sir. Good to work with you again today as well. Good to see you, Richard. Thanks for your input. Thank you, everybody, to each of our 5 panelists. You've been fabulous. I knew you were going to be a chatty bunch. You did not let me down. Thank you for that. We got through all of our questions as well. We held our audience. Next session, everybody, is 1 o'clock today. The importance of leveraging data. That word gets used a lot, so we're going to try and unpack that a bit. But for now, it's lunchtime. Get yourself a kettle on and get yourself a sandwich. And thank you all for today. Cheers. Bye-bye.